Congresswoman, we were just talking about UP train derailment, but we're going to move on.
What happened and where?
20 cars fell off the track. Albany County near Bossler?
Bosler, north of Laramie.
It's actually nobody hurt. The brakeman hit the brakes pretty fast, and yeah, we're okay. Not too bad. I want to get with you we're going to cover a lot of ground. I want to. It's the 200-day report card. 200 days. Yeah, so let's start reporting. First off, how was Israel? You made a visit to the Holy Land.
It was an incredible opportunity to go over there and actually understand the geopolitical situation. So we were everywhere from in the north. We were looking over into Syria, and you could see Lebanon and the situation there in terms of how tight and close everything is. We went to the Golan Heights in the south. We went to the very first kibbutz that was attacked on October 7th, 2023. And we're able to observe how close Gaza is, the Gaza Strip is to that area. We talked a lot about safety and security. We talked about the politics surrounding what is going on with the war. We met with Mike Huckabee. We met with the opposition leader. We met with Netanyahu. We were able to meet with the President Herzog. We met with military. And then we also had an opportunity to look at some of the Christian and Jewish sites that are so incredibly important to our history. I learned a lot.
Cool. Yeah, everybody who goes says they're just
excuse me.
They're just taken immediately by how small, how tight everything is. You know, the travel from here to here is just all those biblical holy lands. It's they're all packed in there. It's not like the U.S. where we got big sprawling space.
No, that's right.
200-day report card, the Trump agenda and the agenda of America as voted by voters is clear. Prioritize economic growth. I think we're getting that done. We're going to talk about tariffs in a moment. Unleash American energy. Wyoming's all excited about that. And securing the borders. 701 miles of border being completed. And we're going to paint it black, Kristi Noem said, to make it hotter. But how's the effort to secure the U.S. from illegal immigration?
So in the reconciliation package that we passed in July, this was obviously one of the most important features in my opinion. I think that there are three aspects of the reconciliation package that are incredibly important to the American public. One of them is unleashing our energy industries and making reliable and affordable energy really the philosophy of the land. And you see that in almost every single thing that the Trump administration has done. The other thing is the immigration aspect of it. And then the third thing was the tax aspect of it. In terms of immigration, that came out of the Judiciary Committee. And with reconciliation, the committees are instructed how they are to spend money or save money or generate revenue. Those are the three things that you can do in a reconciliation package, because this is all about the budget. So with the Judiciary Committee, because we oversee the immigration laws, we were instructed to spend $110 billion. We did not. We only spent $7 billion. That's part of why we were able to save a total of $1.6 trillion in spending. And what we did is we created much more of a fee-based immigration system. So rather than the American public being responsible and on the hook for paying all of the costs associated with people coming to our country, the people who the people who engage with our immigration system are the ones that are going to pay for it. So that was a huge change. And as a result, we were able to save over $70 billion just with those types of changes to our immigration laws. Yes, we're going to be building an additional 701 miles of border wall, which will essentially complete the project that the president started in his first term. So those are all very positive developments. I was just listening to somebody the other day, and they were talking about the people who come here from India or China or Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan who come here and claim asylum. And they said, look at all these countries that they had to travel through to get to the American border. There are lots of safe countries that they could have claimed asylum in if they truly had legitimate asylum claims. They are coming to America for economic reasons, and they are also coming here because of our welfare state. So that is something that people need to understand. These are not people who have to come to America to be safe. They are coming to America because they are economic, because they want to come here for our economic situation. That is not refugee status. That is not seeking asylum. And that is something that we need to address with our immigration laws.
Yeah, coming here for the Medicaid and to drive trucks poorly. We'll talk about that in a second. I mean, what about the Recisions Act? I don't, no matter how long you've been in Congress, you probably had to go look up a few things about how it even works. Like, what is it? I didn't even know what it was. Nobody knew what it was. A Recisions Act. It is unique. It hasn't been utilized in forever, and it clawed back some money. Obviously, we didn't know about the NPR, PBS. What was the decision behind enacting it, and how did you get up to speed on what it even is to get going on it?
So both reconciliation and rescissions, those are terms of art in Congress, and the rescissions law allows us. The president can identify certain programs or spending that he doesn't believe that money should be spent on. He sends us a letter, we draft the bill, and we rescind the money that was appropriated for those programs. So that's what we did again in July, and we rescinded about $9 billion in spending. In light of the fact that last week we crossed the $37 trillion mark, that's really a drop in the bucket. I would like to see a rescissions package every single week. I don't care if it's 50 million or 75 million or 7.2 billion or 46 billion. We have got to cut spending when we have $37 trillion in debt. At the same time, I'm going to say with the reconciliation package and unleashing our American companies and re-onshoring manufacturing, I think you're going to see our economy absolutely explode, and we will be able to use that to start spending down on the debt as well. So there are so many different things that are happening economically in this country right now that I think are good for the long term in terms of getting control of our national debt and the out of control spending in Washington, D.C.
Let's stay on the economic part, the economy. The one big beautiful bill repealed some of the damage done by the Inflation Reduction Act. Are we on the right track with the economy?
Well, absolutely. The Inflation Reduction Act did not reduce inflation, and everybody knows that. And that's one of the things that comes out of Washington, D.C. again is when they describe something, you probably ought to recognize that it's just the opposite of what it is actually doing. The Inflation Reduction Act, as the president said, is the Green New Scam. That's all that it is. It is an effort to destroy our oil and gas industries, our coal industries, even our uranium industry, our nuclear power. So what we did do is we repealed a lot of the bad things out of the IRA, but there's still more work to do. I would like to see another reconciliation package. As you may know, the bill came out of the House, the reconciliation bill, I think was much more robust than what was ultimately signed into law. In part, that's because the Senate has very specific rules that it has to follow with reconciliation. And ultimately, it is the parliamentarian that determines whether the bill that we have put forward complies with the reconciliation requirements. So I'd like to get in there. I'd like to rewrite some of the things that kind of got pulled out and set aside and see if we can get them through in a second reconciliation package.
Back to border safety and tightening the border. You may ask why. And two incidents really should be all the answer you need. That was the recent trucker who didn't have a grasp of English, made an illegal U-turn, killed 3 people, and the Laken Riley Act. Getting tough on illegal alien criminals is important.
So important. And as you know, I've kind of led the charge on the English language proficiency requirements for our truckers. And I just had an opportunity to have a roundtable discussion last week with our trucking industry. And there's a lot that I am learning, a lot more that I'm learning in this space. And I'm right now in Jackson, Wyoming. I've had meetings up here, and I was here for the crypto conference. But as I was traveling across I-80 a couple of days ago, I started counting the number of trucks that I was encountering within a 1 mile space. I could kind of estimate,
Yeah.
1 mile ahead of me and counting the trucks both in front of me and the others coming on the other side. I don't think I've ever been on that highway with that many trucks in my life. That's how incredibly important the I-80 corridor is. We have 80,000 people who cross I-80 every single day, and that's probably a lowball number at this point, but a substantial number of those are trucks. Why is that important? Because I care about the safety of Wyomingites and others who are traveling on I-80. And that's why I have stepped in and tried to make sure that we have English language proficiency, not only their requirements, but that they're enforced. So as I was traveling across I-80 on a summer day, not a lot of wind, we still had the digital signs giving warnings about what was coming up and what was happening. So there's construction on I-80. There are different, no shoulder ahead, highway painting. There's all different kinds of things going on. If you can't read English, you can't drive a truck safely. It's that simple. Something else that I've learned about is what are called chameleon trucking companies. And these are trucking companies that basically use illegal labor, people who cannot speak the language. And I'm real curious as to whether this guy even received a legitimate CDL or whether he bought it, whether there was fraud associated with him even getting the CDL. Because my understanding is that there's a lot of fraud in California in terms of people engaged in selling CDLs without people actually qualifying for them. So that needs to be determined, and those people need to be held accountable if this guy did not have a legitimate CDL, which we know that he didn't because he couldn't speak English. But anyway, we have these companies, they basically, after they do terrible things, they basically throw that DOT number again, reapply, get a new DOT number, and they're back in business, despite the fact that they are creating very serious safety hazards on our highways.
We got to fix that.
So we're going to be looking into that too.
We got to fix that. We got to fix, this ongoing war on drugs. Talk a little bit about the Halt Fentanyl Act. We're now going to make fentanyl a Schedule 1 drug. That is stuff like fentanyl, threatens to just get into society and wreck everything. We got to be hard on opioids.
Well, it's the number one killer of I'm probably going to get the age group wrong, but I'll give you an estimate of young men, early 20s to early 40s. Fentanyl overdoses is the number one killer. That is outrageous. And so you think about it and you think, well, why hasn't it been a Schedule 1 drug before? Why haven't we done that? One of the things that you're always doing as a lawmaker is in some ways you're playing catch up. Because the bad guys out there, they're always figuring out ways to make money. They're always figuring out, how do I get more drugs into the United States? What do I do in terms of human trafficking? That's what we're dealing with when we're talking about the Mexican drug cartels and the damage that they cause in the United States of America. But this is one of the areas where we need to play catch up. We need to make sure that we're addressing this because fentanyl is absolutely the scourge of our society. One of the very first hearings that I participated in after I became a member of Congress was in the Judiciary Committee. And I'll never forget the young father who lost his 15-year-old son, who thought he was just taking, I think it was a Tylenol. He just thought he was taking a Tylenol. And it was laced with fentanyl, and he died. And you just hear those stories, and it breaks your heart. That man will stay in my heart forever. Simply because of the loss that he has suffered, just an absolute senseless loss that he suffered losing his young boy.
Third time that one of your town halls got a little bit of friction. Some of the news agencies said you were, heavily booed. I heard one person booing, but you weren't asked about tariffs and who put the tariffs in place. And you did make a good point. And I'm seeing, depending on where you get your news, I'm seeing that tariffs are working. We're making money on the tariffs. Some of the stuff that President Trump was doing, it's working.
Over $120 billion. But the other thing that it has done is it's brought these countries to the table so that we can negotiate trade deals. Again, the other day when I was driving across Wyoming, I was actually listening to NPR. I was listening to a rock station, a country station, and NPR. It was very interesting as I traveled across the state.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they were talking about was, this whole tariff issue, and it has raised over $120 billion has come into the American coffers. But they were talking about some of the trade that we do with like Vietnam and some of the countries of the South China Sea. Well, we've now entered into a trade agreement with some of those countries. So the tariffs are what they are, but that's through the trade agreement that has been entered into. So over $120 billion into our coffers. Do I think that Congress needs to act? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do. I believe that we need to exercise our authority and step into this space and start working with this. But one of the challenges that we have is that it is so difficult to get things done in Congress. That isn't excusing us, and I'm not trying to make excuses for us. We need to be looking at the tariffs and addressing the trade issues ourselves.
President Trump and the federalization of the D.C. police force, does he have that right? Do we need to take control of our cities?
Well, he does for a short period of time in Washington, D.C. He does not in the other cities because it is not the same rule that applies. D.C. is not a city like others because that is the U.S. capital, and under the Constitution, they have different rules and then we have different laws because we oversee Washington, D.C. So when we come back in September, I anticipate that there is going to be a bill to address this. This again goes back to kind of a reaction, the reactionary situation that we're always in. We're watching our big, beautiful cities die on the vine because of rampant crime, because of rampant homelessness, because of rampant open-air drug markets. You go to San Francisco, and my husband and I used to travel to San Francisco a lot because we love that city. You can't go there now. There are areas of San Francisco that have been absolutely destroyed, and they are the downtown area, the Tenderloin District. Those areas have been destroyed because of the failed leadership in San Francisco. You have the same issue in Los Angeles, the same issue in New York City, and it is because of failed leadership. It is because people they claim they're being compassionate. Well, they've got a mental health issue. They have a drug issue. We don't want to condemn them. This is tough. We don't want to do anything. And as a result, they've allowed lawlessness to prevail, and they're destroying our big cities. And I see it in Washington, D.C. Not everywhere, but I know where the crime is, and I know where the homelessness is, and I drive by it every single day. We have got to get back to the rule of law. We have got to get back to an expectation that when you are a member of our society, you have certain responsibilities. But I know where the crime is, and I know where the homelessness is, and I drive by it every single day. We have got law. We have got to get back to of our society. You have certain responsibilities, and laying on the street.
Congresswoman Harriet Hageman, who is frozen up on our Zoom on that note.
I can hear you.
Okay, now you're back. It must just a momentary blip, perhaps. Yeah, it's I don't know if it's yours or mine. I think I'm going to blame it on your internet connection. But if you're still with us, just two more things, Congresswoman. The Genius Act establishing a national framework to regulate stablecoin. Wyoming just announced first state to make an official stablecoin. That's good news.
It is good news, and I am here in Jackson in part to participate in the cryptocurrency conference. And Cynthia Lummis spoke yesterday. Senator Lummis spoke yesterday. Did an absolutely fabulous job. She has a lot to impart in this area. The Genius Act is the first effort to actually provide a regulatory and consumer protection framework for how we deal with stablecoins. And the thing about stablecoins is it's tied to the American dollar. There's already $250 billion that associated with stablecoin. That's only going to expand. And they were talking yesterday, the timeline that they see where we would potentially get up to $1 trillion. But the fact that it is tied to the US dollar means that the US dollar will remain the reserve currency of the world into the long distant future. So actually what we're doing is strengthening the US dollar and strengthening the US dollar being the reserve currency. So there's a lot that is going on in this space. We already out of the House passed the Clarity Act, which is another bill that is focused on consumer protection. And we passed that. It is now in the Senate. And Cynthia gave us kind of a timeline yesterday as to when we can expect the Senate to take this up. But I think that this is an exciting time because Wyoming is right at the forefront.
Is this in connection at all with the Federal Reserve being in town, being up there in Jackson? No, just happens to.
We had an opportunity to kind of engage with some of the Federal Reserve folks the first night that I arrived after our dinner. After the dinner, there was a reception that for both of them, but I didn't interact with the Federal Reserve folks at all.
That's a good thing because they got bats up there at Jackson Lake Lodge. You don't want to get in, but you don't want to get rabies. One last thing. How is the Congresswoman's office getting anything done with Preston Swan back in college? Your intern.
I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. We're going to miss him.
Yeah.
We're going to miss him.
Well, I appreciate you popping on with us. Also, boy, your efforts on, you were in Sheridan about cheatgrass, and that's probably going to come in after this Red Canyon fire.
I'll tell you what, you again, when you drive across the state, you see how it has been taken up. And I was, several years ago, I was at the extension operation there at Lingle, the James Hageman extension operation there at Lingle. They were talking about cheatgrass, and they were talking about the various ways that they've gone about attempting to treat it. And it is just a nasty weed. It is a nasty weed that is an invasive species. It's very difficult to eradicate once it gets a toehold. It is something that we need to try to figure out if there is some treatments that we can start implementing because it has affected us statewide.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing on behalf of Wyoming and the United States. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.